Welcome to this podcast celebrating the 10th anniversary of the International Society for Managing and Technical Editors. I am Kristen Overstreet, a past president and member of the founding board of directors, and I am talking with Dr. Jason Roberts, the founding president of the ISMTE. Jason, the current ISMTE board asked me to talk with you about your memories and vision for the society on its 10th anniversary, and I was thrilled to have that opportunity. ISMTE is very important to me, so it's exciting to have the opportunity to record some of its history today, and it's also the way you and I first met. So my first question is, where did the idea come from to start ISMTE?
Well, hi, Christy. Hi, everyone. I'm honoured to be asked to reminisce on the first decade of ISMTE. Dates and events and sometimes names get a little fuzzy for me on time, so if I get anything wrong, don't treat this as gospel. Anyway, so the idea kind of came about at it was a Scholar One user conference meeting in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'd been asked to speak on how I use the system. And so I stood up there, gave a little presentation on some of the reports I'd created, some of the configurations I'd made to the site, and I just thought that was a fairly routine thing, but it seemed to really excite a lot of people there, and not least the person sat next to me, who was Ira Salkin, who went on to become a founding member of the society, and very sadly passed away in 2016. Ira was an editor-in-chief and a managing editor at the same time, and he said that it was a really great opportunity presented at this particular meeting, exchange ideas and hear what other people were doing. And from that, the two of us thought, well, maybe we could form some sort of a group that could achieve that aim. Now, to do that, we thought, well, we didn't want it to be something that was system-specific or publisher-specific. And beyond that, well, then it's just really getting like-minded people together and exchanging ideas. So, we went to the coffee break and the bar afterwards and talked about this with a few people, and there seemed to be a lot of excitement. I can't remember everyone that was there, but I do know that some of the people that went on to help form the society were there that fateful day. So that was really the literal origin of the idea. It was at that particular meeting. At the time, there really was no place at all to meet fellow editorial office staff. There were these user group meetings that Scholar One and Aries with editorial manager were laying on, and there were other systems as well. Those were the two meetings that I particularly went to, and I thought they were very good. There was a lot of stuff that was just about this is how you do this in this system, and that was very operational. But there was not a lot of conversation about efficiencies or different ways that you could approach something, thinking about a situation philosophically. And certainly, there was not a lot of opportunities at those meetings or at some of the other industry meetings where you actually met people that were doing the job, talking about how they did the job. There was a lot of people telling us how to do our job. And so that really was what ISMTE was all about initially, was making sure that we could really educate each other.
Do you think there was something about the timing of when the society launched that helped it be successful?
Yes, actually, I do think that the timing was opportune for a society such as ISMTE. The issue was that really no editorial offices had really been professional up until that point. Most editorial offices, when the editor ended their term, typically boxes were packed up and shipped off to the next editorial office, and all that institutional knowledge was lost, and we never really got to stay on with the next editor. There were rare cases. But one of the reasons for that, of course, and this was another reason why the timing was right for ISMTE, was that we started to have these online systems. And until then, it was all paper-based. But now we had a system that was transferable. You could, even yourself, if you up sticks and moved with an editor, you could still use the same system. But we could be based remotely from our editors. I've never worked in an office with my editors. Always worked remotely, and so we had this, this new online environment, and so that meant that there were people that were considering running editorial offices as a profession rather than something as a supplementary income stream. The other reason why the timing was just right for ISMTE was that there really was a big knowledge gap on how to implement policies, guidelines, practices. Publication ethics was becoming quite big at that time, and there was no guidance on how do we actually execute this. There was no handbook at the time on how to run an editorial office. One shortly appeared thereafter, written by Irene Hames, who I think most of us considered to be the the founding figure really of professional editorial office management, and of course she wrote the book on the subject. So putting all those things together, I think that's why ISMT took off the way it did. It was that we had these systems that we were professionalizing slowly, and that we realized that there were big gaps in our knowledge and our understanding on how to better run an editorial office.
So you mentioned other societies, and I know Council of Science Editors in the United States and the European Association of Science Editors in Europe were around at that time. What made you feel they did not respond to the editorial office needs? And how in that way does ISMTE and the other societies differ?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think both the EASE and the CSE meetings are two of the highlights in the calendar for me. I love both meetings, and I've learned a lot from them. And we never set up ISMTE to be something to compete with them. I think it was to complement them, and how we've started to work with them over the years shows that was absolutely the right philosophy. Those societies are much broader in their member base. They have a very disparate group of people that are part of the society, and so they have to cover all those different needs. And so if you could only afford to go to one meeting a year, it might be that if you're an editorial office person and you're probably working on a very limited budget, if you could only get something that was 2 or 3 sessions out of a 2 or 3 day meeting, that might be hard to justify the expense. But again, I think those meetings in and of themselves are very important. And if you're ever lucky enough to attend them, I think you'll learn a lot from them. So we never tried to do something that was in competition. It was just to really, again, as I said earlier, it's just to fill in some of the knowledge gaps, really, and in a very focused way.
Who was involved in the startup of the society?
Well, Christy, this is where I fear I will get names and people's roles wrong. So I'm really just going to skate over that, if you don't mind. There is actually an article that I've written for Aeon, which is appearing in early 2017, and I talk a little bit there about the different waves of people that have got involved. But very specifically for the first group of people that were there, well, there was Taylor Bowen, and Taylor was a very useful person to know, because Taylor had been involved right at the start with Manuscript Central, now Scholar One system, and so he understood a lot of the technical side of things. There was Jen Dayton and Julie Nash. They were right there at the start, and I think at that point they were just J&J. I'm not even sure that they had many people working for them, so it was early days for them as well. We had Elizabeth Blaylock, and she got roped in because I knew her. In fact, she was actually the inspiration for me going off to becoming a managing editor. I'd been a publisher until then, and I'd actually worked with her. Her journal was one of the journals I published, and I was very impressed with what she did, and I loved her role. I thought, wow, I wouldn't mind doing that myself. So, she got involved in Start, and of course she became the second president. There was Irene Hames from the UK, and Irene, as I've already said, was really the leading light in the field. So to have her on board was really giving us credibility. There was, of course, yourself, and I'm not even sure how we got connected now. I think a publisher recommended I talk to you because they thought that you seemed to be really interested in thinking about the issues of better running an editorial office. There was Iris Alkin, who I've already mentioned, and then there was 1 or 2 other folks, some of them who no longer in the industry even, and we kind of lost touch with them, but each and every single one of them played an important role. We also kicked things off. We worked with an association management company, and it didn't quite work out the way that we'd hoped. And then what happened was we actually found a member who was a former association manager. So she'd run societies in the past. So she was in retirement, and running an editorial office was a retirement job. And she took on the role of running the society. And things went beautifully smoothly for a year. And she really got our meeting up and running, and our finances in order, and just all the legal stuff you have to do to get a society off the ground. And then, tragically, 3 weeks after the meeting that we had in Baltimore, she passed away, which was entirely took us by surprise. She hadn't been ill. And so we were back at square one again, and we scrambled. We found another person, Leslie Guillaume, as she was known then. She took on the role of running a society, and thank goodness, because it's an unbelievably complex thing to do, and the amount of legal paperwork and financial stuff you have to do is quite scary. One thing I was going to say is that we were all quite young back then as well, and I think that contributed because it gave us a lot of energy, and we were all excited and young and fired up and willing to do this. And I think that really helped get this organization up and running.
I remember there was a couple of key supporters financially for us as well that I think helped us get going. And Sage, I believe, was an early sponsor, maybe our first. And then Wiley Blackwell came in very early on and has continued to support the society through all 10 years.
Yes, that's correct. It took a little while to get one or two folks involved, but it very quickly snowballed. And let's not forget the folks at Aries and at Scholar One and Journal Press. I mean, they came to the first meetings, they got involved, and they supported us. And without these folks, we really couldn't have got it off the ground. I mean, volunteer work will only get you so far. You need money at some point to get things going. And definitely there was we all chipped in a bit. We worked with different publishers, so we'd ask around. And I'd worked in the publishing industry for a few years, and a lot of the people I'd worked with had scattered far and wide across the industry. So I begged and called in some favors and things like that. But my goodness, it was a group effort. It took a lot of work to get that to get the finances to a point where we could have meetings and get Eon out there and get a website up. It's a lot to contemplate.
And now, of course, we had Apex Management Group come on, and they've done, I think they've taken the society to the next level. So it's fun to look back and see all the steps we've taken to get where we are now. When you look back, Jason, to what you hoped ISMTE would achieve when you first conceived of it, how does the reality compare to your vision?
Well, first of all, I think it's a lot of people's vision, and I had a vision, but I'm sure others other different visions. I think at the same time, though, every single one of us that was involved at the start must be delighted to see the exchange of information, particularly at the meetings. And I appreciate that not every member can ever get to the meetings, but they truly are a realization of what we dreamed, that could be possible, that we would be able to learn from each other. And it's great when you get some of the speakers in, and the big names well known in the industry, that whatever they do, whether they're a publisher or service provider of some description, a vendor, an academic. But I got to tell you that the sessions I love best, and the resources I enjoy reading the most or whatever, or using the most, are the ones that we have generated ourselves. And I love a good war story. I love to hear somebody's tales of woe or how they tackled a problem. A problem. It's all very empathetic, and we've all been there. So that, in that regard, certainly when you go to the meetings, you see that. But just I think about Eon as well, editorial office news. Gosh, we struggled for the longest time to come up with a name for that, and it was actually Taylor Bowen's idea, and we all loved it. And my goodness, what a great publication! And of course, you got to take a lot of credit for that, because you got the whole thing up and running, and it is such an amazing resource, and the fact that it comes out so often as well, and gets some great writers in it as well. I think that to me exceeded my expectations. I really, I just thought, we'd probably have a bit of a newsletter, just letting people know what's going on in the wider world. The fact that we have this educational publication that comes out, and the fact that it's even in Mandarin, it's actually kind of mind-blowing in a way.
Why do you think the launch of this new society was successful? I know you've talked about that throughout today, but is there any one thing or something you haven't mentioned yet that you really think, a lot of things start, but not a lot of things make it to the point where they can become 10 years old and be growing at the rate that ISMTE is?
Absolutely. I think most things would probably fail because there's people that have great ideas and they start off and then they very quickly run out of steam. But that has never happened with ISMTE. People got involved and they maybe switched roles, and that might have helped keep things going. They didn't keep doing the same thing year in, year out. So that helped it get going. There was this incredible amount of energy. But the fact is that the society has been brilliant at renewing itself. New people just come in and, bring fantastic ideas that nobody's contemplated until that point. They bring a new level of energy. And that is the main reason why I think the society has continued to grow. Also, most of us work with societies for the journals that we publish. And, you'll often be confronted by egos and a lot of politics and political shenanigans and backroom deals. And there's absolutely none of that. There's a complete absence of ego with ISMT. And that's maybe partly to do with the nature of the work as well. But that's why it succeeds. Nobody's felt the need to suddenly break off and form a splinter group. Everyone feels that their voice is heard. And if they do feel, that it hasn't been heard, that they feel confident that they can actually raise that very point, and that they then do get heard, if anyone felt slighted in any way. But, we've constantly canvassed members over the years to find out what they want. We always have sessions at the meetings where, there's a chance to feedback about the society. So we live and learn. I'm sure there's been mistakes that we've made, but the fact that inside 10 years we've grown to 1,000 members, and bear in mind that a lot of the folks that join this society, 10 years ago, they're not even doing this kind of work anymore. They've left to do other things. So we're not like some of the professional and learned societies where once you become a doctor, you're a doctor till you retire, and you stay in that society. We've had people come and go. So I think it's that our ability to renew ourselves has been probably the biggest single reason for our continued success.
Jason, thank you very much. I think we're going to continue our conversation in a couple more podcasts, but I just want to take the opportunity at the end of this one to thank you for all that you did to get the society off the ground. I remember that you were the driving force, you were the leader. I don't know how you worked because there was so much work involved in just setting up the society, which you were doing as a volunteer. And without you, I don't think we'd be where we are today.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, Christy. And sure, it was a lot of hard work, but honestly, it was just the right group of people, and then the second wave and the third wave, continuing refreshing ourselves with amazingly talented people, and really, it's a testimony to them. I mean, I had the idea on how to pull it all together, and maybe I was quite well placed because I'd worked in publishing and I'd worked on both sides of the Atlantic. But really, this was a group. This was a group effort, and there's a heck of a lot of people that if they hadn't given up a lot of their time and volunteered a lot of hours, we wouldn't be sat here now talking about 10 years.
Thank you all for joining us today, and stick with us for podcasts 2 and 3, where we will continue the conversation.